I'm going to introduce our panelists. We have Karishma Swali, who has been at the forefront of preservation, revival, and conservation of India's intangible cultural heritage. And since 1998, she has led Chanakya International, a global textile house established in 1984. Recognizing a compelling need to address social, economic, and environmental challenges, Karishma Swali established the Chanakya Foundation in 2015. Why don't you come up, Karishma? And with us today, we also have Maximiliano Modesti, who is the founder of Ateliers 2M, based in Bombay. It's an embroidery and textile development firm, which boasts an illustrious list of clients like Isabel Marant, Chloe, Hermes, Dior, name it. For over 2 decades, Max has elevated Indian embroidery to global haute couture. But at heart, he's a preservationist. He's learned his ropes with Azzuddin Alaya, and in 2016, he set up the Lucknow Design Trust, and he has a beautiful institute called Kalhat that's come out of this. Max, why don't you come up? And our third panelist is Sanjay Garg, the founder of Raw Mango. And as a student of textile design, he's developed his unique language in 2008, working in Chanderi in MP. Sanjay undertook innovations within the yarn and weaving process to create a new visual vocabulary that we're all very familiar with. Our topic today is Beyond Embellishments, Rethinking Indian Craft in Fashion Design. I'm going to start with Max, who also made a very strong point on talking about this. And as someone who's worked extensively with Indian artisans and heritage techniques, how do you envision the integration of traditional Indian craft into contemporary, minimalist fashion without losing its roots?
Well, thank you, Supriya. I think it's a large subject, and that's why, with Karishma and Sanjay, we are here. And it was so interesting to see Rohit Bal's designs just before, because suddenly, you went back to the 90s, you went back to the start of what I call Indian fashion scene in 92, I think 91, 92, if the oldest styles. So I think for many, many years, Indian fashion design was associated with richness of creation. Okay? And it was all about these extravagant designs. And which was also the strong point, because in the early 90s, and I'm sure that Karishma can confirm that, okay, you would come to India, and what would completely jump to your eyes was the richness of all the crafts. So it really started from, the crafts. Now the question that, we could ask Sanjay, because he's one of the designers, he's one of today's designers, is how do you translate from this richness of crafts, and how do you make it an international product that can appeal to an Indian consumer, but also to the rest of the world?
Yeah. It's the same thing, like how do you reinterpret traditional textiles in a modern context? That's what you've been doing. But how do you approach the challenge of presenting Indian crafts in a way that seems progressive, yet rooted in what it is all about?
Well, yeah. So, I think that, there's, always a conversation between tradition and modern. And I think what I have been saying that more tradition, okay. Hello? Yeah. I think tradition is not a passe to me, it's an ongoing conversation. Tradition is not, what is a tradition, first of all, if you want to understand the real traditions are. Traditions have, human race is like a 2 lakh year old, and we did not wear clothes for the many, many lakhs, right? And we just very recently wore first kind of clothes. And then human race, there's an Indus Valley civilization, and then you will say Mauryans, and then Guptas, and Cholas, and what is the tradition? What is that point of tradition you want to talk about? I think it's an ongoing conversation. How do we take from tradition to the next generation? What are we contributing in it? Meaning we are not just a burden. Tradition is just not a passe or a burden given to us and you cannot change with it. I think it has to go through the change. It's like a flowing river. The water need to flow. If it does not flow, it is going to stink. It's like I do not want tradition to die like a death of a Sanskrit. If I can give an example, if it's no more spoken and no more words are added in, it's going to die. It's no more a spoken language. Traditions are not same as Sanskrit. I think it's ongoing. If what you given in your heritage and how do you contribute and how do you transfer to the next one with what changes is needed, not everything in the tradition given to us is you have to follow all true or it makes sense today. Something need to die in a museum and that's how things are. You know, they have an age. So tradition is, to me, is an ongoing conversation. It's a continuous thing.
Well put. And Karishma, see, largely with Chanakya School and your own work, you work with luxury craft-based collections that are known for intricate detailing. You can all see the work of Chanakya School over here, everyone. And how do you sort of approach the challenges in terms of this level of storytelling with Indian craftsmanship, with the growing global demand for understated, more functional fashion?
Thank you, Supriya. So happy to be here with colleagues that I respect deeply. You know, when we think about it at the Foundation and the School of Craft, I think we ask the fundamental question of what craft is. And essentially, craft is a medium, isn't it? It's a medium just like painting or music or dance. And somehow, sometimes I think we categorize or compartmentalize that medium into calling it what its visual vocabulary may be. And there's this idea that craft has, you know, is opulent or craft is, but actually what the visual vocabulary is can be decided by the practitioner of craft. But what craft is it something that we've inherited for over 6,000 years? You know, we enjoy it. I think it's a container of our culture. It is our collective identity. And what we choose to do is really a question we need to ask ourselves. How do we lend to its preservation, to its conservation? I think a lot of it has to do with innovation. A lot of it has to do with responsibly being able to marry the DNA of craft with a visual vocabulary that you want to lend to it. And so I think it really depends on how you choose to interpret. And you can really tell any story through craft.
Well put. And this is a question I want to ask all three of you. See, I think Indian fashion in general is seen through a lens of grandeur and opulence. You brought it up. And do you think that there is a risk that, you know, the focus on embellishments and maximalism could limit the evolution of Indian craft into a new language? And, you know, it lets you go into unexpected avenues the moment you try something new. How do you sort of strike the balance to appeal to a diverse audience, a maybe different audience, while staying true to your vision? We'll start with you, Sanjay.
Well, as I say that, you know, India, first of all, there is not a country. There are many
countries,
like
yes.
a big continent, right? And as we have different weather conditions, we have like different identity, different color, different visually how we look, and different techniques. There are people who produce textile and there are people who use as a surface ornamentation, right? In Rajasthan and north side of India. And of course there is a embellishment come, but as a country, contrary, we are not we don't wear embellishment day to day. And what is very interesting is that I am happy to work for the, you know, foreign market. I'm okay to be producer and known for embroidery, but at the same time, if you really want to know that, is really limiting our imagery. Everything has become in Indian design is that, okay, this is a 400-hour taken. They do not even talk about like how good the design is. It's about how many hours of the embroidery is. So to me, it's kind of challenging the intellect of design. I really dying and itch to design that, oh, it took 2 hours, but it's great. And it can actually challenge the 400 hours. Idea is not how laborious it is. It's ideas, again, there's a conversation about 8-hour working in the corporate world, that how long you need to work, and someone says it's not about that, it's about quality of work. I think the design is not about it, and as Indian designers selling them, I think it's kind of you positioning themselves as in we are the labor, we are the producer, but we are not as in the designer and the intellect, I think I would really like to challenge. This is just one of the technique. Let's talk about the technique, how fine it is, what technique it is, rather than how many hours you put into it. I'm literally, whenever I see that, okay, this is the Indian design and that many hours have gone into it, I said, no, I want to talk about design. That you haven't put the hours, someone else have done hours for you. What have you done? Actually, can you reduce it? Why do you have to put so many hours? Why doesn't someone has to become blind to create? So India as the producer, I don't think so. I mean, it's actually limiting ourselves. We can be more than just a producer. We are a thinking country and we need to be seen in terms of design in the world platform, and also country of textiles and fiber and so on, like furniture design, where the design come in. It's just not about how much time you spent in that making. We are just not the maker, we are more than that. That's all.
From a country of decorators, India is slowly becoming a country of designers.
Yes.
And that's what is very important. Because unless you're a designer and you have a strong design point, you cannot culturally influence the rest of the world. Here we are talking about something very important, which is soft power culture. Okay? We are running creative industries. Okay? The number of people that we employ, the impact that we have right now in India, nobody knows really, okay? Only the luxury brands in Europe, they know. They know that they cannot afford today, be it Dior, be it Hermes, okay? They cannot afford to lose the know-how and the craft and the design that this country brings to them. There's no other country. I've always said that if there's one last country in the world that will be able to produce all these crafts, it will be India. One very good point that you said, Sanjay, is the number of hours. I'm completely fed up of the number of hours. You know, you open the magazines. This dress took 3,500 hours. 3,500 hours. I saw one kind of dress, 3,500 hours. There's a dress here which is showing. It's a dress we did in 1996 for Azedin Alaya. Okay, it just has 200 hours of embroidery. But it has 200 hours of a very simple stitch on a beautiful knit. And that completely revolutionized the way Europe was looking at Indian embroidery at that moment. Okay? So when you look at that tapestry is a beautiful example of design. It's a craft, yes, but we don't care about the craft. What matters here is the design. It's a reference to Swedish design, it's the reference to Indian design, it's the reference to Shamauja designs. Because if you look at Shamauja, first design since '63, that's coming from there. So, you know, I could talk for hours and hours about the subject, but design and craft. You cannot build up a design industry, you cannot build up brands if it's only about decoration. You need design.
I think another big part of craft that we sort of seem to have forgotten along the way is how deeply personal it started out as being. It started out as a dialogue that was personal to communities that were linked to their geographical and historical context.
We're not over. No.
If you don't mind dancing, let's party.
Guys, we still have some time. Cool.
That's
Sorry,
hilarious.
Karish.
Sorry, so I'll go back to that. I said when you look at the past and how craft was treated, it was a mode of expression that took into context, the history of the region, the geography, the communities that did it, and in some way it really was a personal expression. And I think this is something that we've lost along the way, and therefore integrating craft design, yes, it's very important, but also making it deeply personal is very important. I think Sanjay does that so beautifully. It's so rooted, but it's also so personal to him. I think that's a big aspect of keeping it fresh, of keeping it new.
That also what draws in, buyers. Can you hear me? Yeah. That also, I think, even with your personal touch, your latest campaign, Garland, for instance, it's a huge draw because you're talking about every phase of someone's life and in that moment where they were getting married. I want to touch upon a little bit about what you all said about the production process, and nobody really wants to know about the number of hours. What strategies, at least in terms of artisan empowerment, do you think are essential to ensure that the artisans that you work with are involved in the production, not just in the production process, but empowered as creators in this narrative that all three of you are building within India and globally? Sanjay, you want to go?
Well, I hear you that. I think other than production, as let's say I work with Chanderi or Mashru or Varanasi, I think when you really make a people or you tell a narrative story about what is Chanderi and what is Mashru is and what is Varanasi is, actually it just doesn't help me. Because a lot of designers do not work continuously in that particular sector. They move on. They're inspired from something else and people want different things. I think if we can educate and create awareness, what is a kadwa or katwa weave in, let's say, Varanasi is, what is pashmina and tush is, what is merino wool is. I think if we really emphasize in that regard, what is Jardozi is, what is chain stitch is, you know. So if you talk about that and you make a bigger brand, because that brand stays. Let's say Chanderi or Maheshwar or Kanjivaram or Varanasi, these are the brands. So if you create a bigger narrative and put them in what is it is, and if you create a bigger brand, it actually does not help. It does help any designer coming into it. You already know what is Chanderi is going to be. Chanderi is silk and cotton. You don't have to educate. They don't have to ask, oh, can you give me a jacket in Chanderi because I'm too cold, you know. So it's kind of a knowledge, and you kind of create an awareness about the craft, which is kind of been told and is told from generation. I think this is what can designers do, because that helps not only the present generation, also the future generation of the maker and also the buyer.
Max?
You know, I think luxury fashion, it's an industry of desire. Do I desire to acquire the dress? Do I desire to acquire the pashmina? Okay. So it's, you know, it's over 30 years that I keep repeating that India is sitting on a gold mine. India is sitting on a gold mine. Let's take the example of pashmina. Nobody knows exactly what is pashmina. You ask the people what is pashmina, people don't really know because it got lost. Okay. In the 17th century, pashmina was considered gold. The Greek Mughal used to gift pashminas to the kings of France. So when you have such an heritage, you know, there needs to be a political will. That's another subject, that's another discussion. Okay. But with the political will, you need to reinvent, you need to design, you need to push, you need to educate the consumer. Okay. Why this is so special? What is luxurious? What is really luxury? I mean, we could have an entire session about what is really luxury. Yes. You know, because when we think that a Birkin is luxury, I'm sorry, Birkin is not luxury. Okay, I can tell you there's a 1 lakh Birkin produced every year. Is it luxury? No, it's not luxury. It's a beautiful object. It's a unique object. It's a costly object. Yes, it's costly because when you see the way it's manufactured, okay, I even said that, oh, actually, it's not expensive enough, you know, and I really believe that. When you see the manufacturing process, so what is costly is the manufacturing process. So when you see pashmina, when you go to Ladakh, when you go to the Chankan Plateau, when you see the herders, okay, taking the fiber, when you see the spinning, when you see the way it's woven, honestly, this is the most luxurious product in the world. And you know why? There's only 15 tones of that product. So just to come back to our subject, is today design is essential. Point of view of designers is essential. Point of view of makers, transformers, okay, foundations, education. You know, I keep repeating since years and years that one of the main issues of the country here is the education. Yes. You know, the education is not at the level. Because the education is not at the level, and it's not the fault of the school, it's not the fault, I mean, it's many, many problems, but because we have an education level in design, which is not at par with Europe, with Italy, with England, with Belgium. Imagine, Belgium, 10 million people. Belgium today runs the fashion world, okay? Correct, Karishma? Yeah. So it's all about education. and till we don't become conscious about it. But right now there's a change shifting in India. So it's fantastic, you know, because actually I've been waiting for 32 years to see the change happen, and finally it's happening, you know. I was thinking that I was going to die and never see it happen, but yes, it's finally happening. Finally, Indian brands are emerging, okay? We are just waiting for big financial to pump up the money to make them global. Yes, because if you don't have the financial resources, you can't make it, you know? And because he will have the financial resources, then he can commit to the artisans. And that's the way we can do it. We can commit to artisans because we have the backing of luxury groups. Otherwise, how do you expect anybody to commit to artisans? It's impossible.
You spoke about education. Before I just come to Karishma, I want you to talk a little bit about Kalhat Institute that you set up, which essentially does this with the artwork, and how you synergize the art world with the artisans. Can you quickly touch on that?
It's very easy. For me, it was always about what Karishma said. It's a medium. All this is a medium. Weaving is a medium. Embroidery is a medium. Painting is a medium. All this. So how do you give access to that of that particular medium,
generation,
okay, to a larger group of designer and artists, in order so that the artisans can communicate with these designers, because that's the only way to open new doors or open new windows.
Karishma, I want you to talk a little bit about the Chanakya School, especially with all the cultural collaborations that you do, but also your interest in sustainability and ethical production. How do you translate all those values into what you create?
So, well, when we started the foundation and the school, first of all, we realized that as a country, we've been blessed to inherit, I think, the widest, deepest, most skilled artisanal base in the world, right? Like they both said. And somehow, you know, it's never been institutionalized. It's taught only generationally from father to son. And so we were at this great peril of losing our artisanal legacies, but also in some way losing our own identities. So when we started the school, really the idea, we didn't know we were starting a school, but we began academically documenting craft communities across India. And it's now our 9th year and we're still not done. So it's incredible what we hold as a country, you know, for millennia. And what we want to do at the foundation is just basically be able to transmit and to provide a fertile space to create artists. So the way we teach the curriculum is, of course, rooted in teaching the master techniques. But like they said, there's a lot of design thinking, there's a lot of art history and color theory. And so to be able to bring the preservation of these disciplines lies hugely in being able to integrate craft, art, and design, and be able to blur these lines to create a new language. So this is fundamentally what we are rooted in at the school, which is why also the collaborations, the cultural exchange, working with widely celebrated artists across the world, all this coming together really is being able to understand the depth of this discipline, which is really quite infinite, and to be able to leave it relevant for our future generations.
Oh, my last question is, all three of you are proud champions of the Made in India label globally. I'm sure it's not been easy, but how has it resonated and changed regional and global perspective? Let's start with you, Sanjay.
Well, as I've been, first of all, these both are going to answer this better than me, but I do agree that that's like yoga or Incredible India campaign, what have done to it, it wasn't done for a specific hotel, but what they have done to, they got more traffic in India as a travel and tourist. I think what we need to be done that, what is that Made in India? Why still we are not able to brand as Made in Italy and Made in USA? I think there's a perspective and positioning for sure. I think there we do lack it, and how have, as an Indian among ourselves, like what it means to be made it outside, right? We all take pride in it. I mean, it's a beautiful mall, and you can see on the ground floor how everything is made outside is on the ground floor. So there are everywhere, we say that very pride that, you know, this is made outside. I think if we do not take pride in ourselves, what we have and what really means being Indian, and how do we take pride and wear it, and no one going to help us. No one else is going to come from outside is going to help us. How we need to see, first of all, I think being comfortable being Indian, you know. what is really India means, and do we want to be leader or follower? Like, do we, I mean, I see in Bombay, people wear boots till death. I mean, they're 47 degree, for God's sake. Like, how do you deal with it? Because someone wore in Paris. It's like, you're going to die, you know, you'll have skin diseases. Things like that. Fashion is, I just, like Bollywood first, I mean, it needs some sort of a refrain. I think it needs a lot of, how do I know? I wish I could block some filters, you know, fashion, or fashion policing if it exists. I think what we influence and what we decide and we become follower, I don't think so there's a future. I think if you want to be leader and thinker, we need to take pride in itself. Who are we? Where are we? And we need to take a position. Otherwise, we just follow. We just follow, what are the problems, what is sustainable means, and what are the problems of the West mean, and then we're going to follow them, we'll answer them. We'll be pitch lagu, you know. We'll be herd mentality.
This is why we love Sanjay.
Max?
I just want to tell you a story. My first embroidery for Hermès, I've made it in 1996 because Jean-Louis Dumas, the owner, used to come to India since 1963. He would spend every summer since 1963 till the year of his death, every month of August, he would come to Gujarat and spend the entire month in Ahmedabad. In 2005, after 10 years of collaborating, designing, we've designed for 10 years, and after 10 years of design, we've created the first product made in India for Hermès, okay? And at the moment, I went to Paris to deliver the product, and I presented it to Jean-Louis Dumas, and he said, fantastic, and he gave me a label. And on that label, there was written, made in India. That's 2005. So what I want to tell people is that in 2005, Hermès started putting a label, made in India, on all the products manufactured in India. Okay?
Amazing, yeah.
They never had any single problem, okay? I was the first to be surprised, let me tell you, because I was working with other brands who always refused to put the made in India. But for him, it was logical, it was a tribute, and he was honored that an Hermès product would carry a made of in India.
Well put. Karishma?
Absolutely. It's fundamental.
It's fundamental.
It's fundamental to honor the root of where something is made, and it's a huge part of the preservation exercise as well. I mean, when we had the show last year, a big part of it was also just personally being able to be grateful, you know, for this legacy. And so, yeah, all the way, it needs to be acknowledged, recognized, and all of that.
Sanjay, Max, Karishma, thank you so much. I hope all of you gain some insight. Thank you.